Ever wondered how many invisible machines are at work while you're watching this video? Every time we shop online, join video conferences, ask ChatGPT questions, generate AI images, or scroll through short videos, we're relying on one thing: the cloud. It might sound far-fetched, but in reality, the cloud is built on the ground in massive data centers filled with machines, cables, and cooling systems. To keep your videos streaming, bank transfers instant, and AI answers flowing, these data processing hubs need to run around the clock, and in the process, they consume enormous amounts of electricity every second. And now Malaysia has become a key player in the race to power our modern life. In recent years, tech giants like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and ByteDance have flocked to the country. Between 2021 and March 2025, Malaysia has approved 144.4 billion ringgit in data center investments. However, these power-hungry monsters are rapidly draining our electricity supply. According to projections, by 2030, data center demand could hit 12.9 gigawatts, about 60% of peninsular Malaysia's peak electricity load. So what's inside a data center and why do they need so much energy? Why is Malaysia becoming such a hotspot for these facilities? Why is nuclear energy suddenly back in our national conversation? And most importantly, what are the long-term environmental consequences of this boom? In this video, we'll dive into how these digital giants are fueling an invisible energy race and explore what it means for our environment, our energy future, and our society. In this video, we'll break down each key part layer by layer. We recommend watching it all through, but if you're short in time, there's a chapter timestamp in the description. You can jump straight to the part that interests you most. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is a data center? Simply put, it's a facility designed to store, manage, and process vast amounts of data. This is Equinix JH1, located in Johor. Equinix operates over 270 data centers worldwide, and JH1 serves both local and international clients across various industries, including fintech, network services, and media companies. Each of these row of cabinets houses servers. Equinix provides the infrastructure, such as power, cooling system, and network connectivity to ensure that every server runs continuously 24 hours a day without interruption.
So our data centers have attracted companies from US, Europe, and some of the Asia-Pac countries to establish their regional hub here to support the customers in this region. And noticeably, the two most important workloads that are being deployed in our data centers are cloud hosting services and AI workloads.
For data centers, the two biggest threats are power outages and overheating. Even a split-second power dip can crash an entire system. The impacts? A frozen Netflix stream, or something as serious as failed bank transfers, cancelled flight bookings, or disrupted hospital systems.
Okay, so we can now see that this is actually a hot house containment, which the hot air from the server that runs both sides will be coming into this area, and then the hot air will be going up above the ceiling. So from what I have been told just now is that inside can go as high as 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. So we are now right in front of the cooling system. So you guys can see from the screen that there is like wind blowing my hair. So this is like a very cold air. With all this server running 24 hours, they also need to run this 24 hours to make sure that the temperature from the server won't go too high, able to maintain below 25 degrees Celsius so that they can run effectively as well.
According to the International Energy Agency, IEA, servers and cooling systems combined account for over 70% of a data center's total electricity consumption. Beyond the air cooling systems you see here, some data centers also rely on liquid cooling, a water-based method that offers more efficient temperature control. The IEA estimates that a 100 megawatt data center in the United States uses around 2 million liters of water each day, roughly the same amount of water consumed by 8,889 Malaysians in a single day. For a deeper dive into the debate over data centers' water usage, check out another Kini News Lab feature linked in the video description below. In the story, we'll shift our focus to another critical resource, electricity. Data centers aren't exactly a new development in Malaysia. Many organizations have long operated private data centers for their own exclusive use. What sets this new wave of investment apart is the scale, driven by the global rise of generative AI and the rapid pace of digital transformation across industries. These forces are driving a surge in demand for cloud computing and energy-intensive AI workloads, fueling the growth of hyperscale data centers in Malaysia. These hyperscale facilities typically span over 10,000 square meters, house more than 5,000 servers, and consume between 100 and 300 megawatts of electricity, roughly equivalent to the power needs of an entire city. Take Google's first data center in Selangor, for example. Once fully operational, it is expected to draw between 300 and 350 megawatts, enough to power Kuantan City.
So it is kind of a very big energy monster that can consume a lot of energy in a short while.
Data centers are by nature extractive. When we think about the immense amount of power and water required to power a data center,
between 2019 and 2022, Singapore paused approvals for new data centers due to land and power constraints. At the same time, the pandemic accelerated digital demand, and the AI boom took off. With cheaper electricity, more land, and faster approvals, Malaysia, especially Johor, quickly emerged as a hotspot for these massive facilities. State Executive Councillor Lee Ting Han shared that, as of August this year, Johor has 13 data centers in operation, 15 under construction, and another 20 approved and undergoing various stages of submission, bringing the total to 48 projects.
I recall the first two projects was by BDC and GDS. They moved so fast that within 14 months, from zero to operation, so it gives confidence to investors that it's doable in Johor. Then other big names come, Microsoft, AirTrunk, Equinix, STT, to name a few. They came, and now it has formed an ecosystem of its own.
According to DC Bytes Markets report, Johor's data center capacity was 10 megawatts in early 2021. By 2025, its total planned capacity surged to 5.7 gigawatts, the fastest growth rate in Southeast Asia. Nationwide, as of March this year, 43 data centers have signed electricity supply agreements with Tenaga Nasional Berhad (TNB), totaling 6.4 gigawatts in planned demand. Of these, 21 are already operational, while the remaining 22 are expected to come online by the end of this year or next. But what does 6.4 gigawatts actually mean? Peninsular Malaysia's peak electricity demand currently stands at around 21 gigawatts. If all 43 data centers go live, they could consume a third of the entire peninsula's peak electricity load. You might be wondering, wow, data centers consume so much electricity. If one is built near my home, will it affect me? Data centers in Johor are currently concentrated at 4 sites. 2 of these, Sedenak Tech Park and YTL Green Data Center Park, are located in Kulai District. We visited and spoke with residents from several nearby communities.
家里的电有时会停电，我们就 complain 啦，我们几间啊，这几间吧有几间，街上也有几间这样子啦。上个月都有发生一轮了。
哦，所以这个是经常发生
啊，久不久它就来一次的啦。
每一次停大概多久？
停差不多1个钟头到2个钟。
Samanya bekalan elektrik semenjak ni dia bukannya terputus semua tau. Sebahagian kampung tu tak ada. Itu pun dah kerap jugalah. Seminggu sekali adalah memang. Seminggu
akan ada gangguan lah.
Dah 3-4 kali inilah.
Dia dalam sebulan 2 bulan adalah masa tu.
Okey.
Macam current dia tak macam kadang-kadang dia slow, kipas slow, kadang kuat. Masa tu kerap juga seminggu 2-3 kali juga.
Okey.
Current kadang slow nanti hidup, nanti kadang mati lagi.
There is currently no direct evidence proving that these power issues are caused by data centers. In fact, some of the outages had been occurring for years, even before construction started. The problems may very well stem from aging infrastructure. What stands out, however, is that nearly every resident we spoke with said they were never officially notified by the authorities about the nearby data center projects. Most only became aware something was happening when heavy trucks began appearing outside their homes.
I feel it was very important to speak up early before the problem rise up, because my constituency in Bukit Batu are already asking whether this type of mega projects will affect their daily utilities. They suddenly come in with the data center. The people in Kampong, Taman, they have no idea how this will affect them, their routine daily life. We are happy with the government to bring in the digital investment, but they also want the reassurance that their basic needs will not be compromised.
So, could data centers really be taking electricity from residents? To answer that, we first need to briefly explain how electricity actually gets to your homes. In Peninsular Malaysia, electricity from various power plants, whether coal, gas, or renewable, is primarily purchased by the national utility, Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, and fed into a centralized grid that TNB builds, operates, and manages. From there, electricity travels through high voltage pylons across different regions. It's then stepped down at multiple substations to lower voltage levels before finally being distributed to homes and businesses.
They are connecting at the high voltage, so they are actually at the higher stream. So they are connected to the very high voltage of 500 kilovolt, 275 kilovolt. This connect to data center, and this PPU connect to other residential, commercial, and so on. And by design, it should be the way, enough for both. You declare maximum is on that level, so we will give you out to that level. And also this is maximum load on this area, TNB side will ensure it's sufficient to supply all.
In other words, hyperscale data centers and residential neighborhoods are connected to different voltage levels within the grid, so they shouldn't affect each other. As long as the power grid is properly designed and power generation is sufficient, a nearby hyperscale data center won't affect your household supply. But here's the critical question: can Malaysia's current electricity generation and grid infrastructure keep up with the rapid expansion of data centers? Let's start with how Malaysia generates electricity. As of 2024, Malaysia's total installed capacity is approximately 33 gigawatts, with Peninsular Malaysia's reserve margin at 24%. In terms of actual electricity generation, about 44% comes from coal, 37% from natural gas, 16% from hydropower, 2% from solar, and 1% from biomass. In other words, around 80% of our electricity still depends on fossil fuels. Coal emits the highest amount of carbon dioxide, while natural gas, which is often viewed as a cleaner alternative with lower carbon dioxide emissions when burned, still possess climate risks. Methane, a greenhouse gas far more potent than carbon dioxide, is emitted across the entire natural gas supply chain, from extraction and processing to transport and storage. In many energy strategies, natural gas serves as a transition fuel, used to phase out coal while renewable infrastructure scales up. In 2023, the Malaysian government launched the National Energy Transition Roadmap, NETR, to address climate change and promote sustainable economic development. The roadmap includes a commitment for no new coal power plants and sets targets for renewable to reach 40% by 2035 and 70% by 2050, with solar leading the way and natural gas projected to account for 29% of installed capacity. However, despite green energy policy starting in 2011, progress has been slow. According to the National Energy Balance Reports, the share of renewable energy installed capacity grew only from 13% to 23% between 2011 and 2021. It was only recently that Deputy Prime Minister Fadila Yusof announced that the share has now reached 30%, led by solar energy. Nonetheless, it's important to note that the installed capacity of renewable energy does not translate into an equal amount of actual electricity generated. Think of it like this: a light bulb powered by solar can only shine when there's sunlight. But if it's connected to coal power, it can stay on 24 hours a day. Same capacity, but different generation. To support the growing electricity demand from data centers, the government launched the Corporate Renewable Energy Supply Scheme, CRESS, in 2024. The scheme allows large users to directly purchase renewable energy from power producers and pay a system access charge to connect to the grid. But Evan Ng, Senior Energy Market Consultant at Baringa, points out a key concern. Under current rules, system access charges can be revised every 3 years by up to 15%, yet the calculation method remains non-transparent. This uncertainty causes data centers, operators, and green energy investors to hesitate or lack confidence in investing.
If we are talking about 15% every 3 years, you are exposed to a pretty big uncertainty. Effectively, in the worst case scenario, you can double the system access charges in the project lifespan.
The second challenge is the grid's ability to handle intermittent energy sources, such as solar. Through its large-scale Solar 5 initiative, the government has allocated 2 gigawatts of new solar capacity, almost 85% of the total from all 4 previous rounds combined. But solar energy has a limit. It can only generate power for 4 to 6 hours a day. Without large-scale battery storage systems, this creates a risk of grid instability, especially for users like data centers, which need to operate 24 hours a day without interruption.
Even though how big solar farm or how many solar farm we install, currently I think penetration at the grid is still maybe less than 20%. Okay. We cannot take more, because when we take more, then the grid can become not stable. So the battery energy storage is to make this penetration can be more.
The Energy Transition and Water Transformation Ministry launched a battery energy storage system program in November 2023, and TNB has pledged 43 billion ringgit to upgrade the grid with smarter technology and energy storage integration. But even if the technology keeps up, solar still requires land to install photovoltaic panels. Sarah Lu, Associate Research Officer at IC's Yusof Ishak Institute, noted that producing just 1 megawatt of solar power typically requires 10 acres of land. That's roughly the size of 5 football fields. If we were to power all 43 data centers, which have signed 6.4 gigawatt electricity supply agreements with solar energy, it would require around 64,000 acres of land. That's equivalent to covering the entire city, Kuala Lumpur, with solar panels, and it still might not be enough. In other words, while renewables are the long-term goal, there's still a long way to go before they can carry the weight of these power-hungry facilities. For now, natural gas is expected to remain a key pillar of stable power generation.
When you have more renewable in the system, more intermittency, you still need some dispatchable power, because relying on storage alone is very expensive. So regardless, you need what we call the dispatchable power plants. Basically, power plants that can turn up and down very quickly in response to the need of the system.
Energy supply, I think it should be no issue. We will supply what is needed. The only question is how green or less green, which I mean is renewable energy really pick up for 100% and LNG finally down. Not so likely in the very near future. In the next 5 years time, I don't see. I will see that is both also going up at this moment, because the demand is going up.
Meanwhile, despite government promises to phase out coal, some caution that it's still too early to tell whether those promises will hold.
Whether or not these plans to retire coal plants can happen would be determined by how quickly Malaysia is able to adopt these alternative forms of cleaner energy.
Reuters reported that Malaysia saw its highest electricity demand growth in 14 years in 2024. To cope, the government leaned heavily on coal-fired power over the past 2 years. TNB says it wants to phase out coal responsibly and expects Malaysia to add 6 to 8 gigawatts of new gas-fired power capacity over the next 5 years, a 40 to 54% increase from current levels. But more gas also means higher import costs.
因为我们这个储存量，天然气的储存量慢慢在下跌，然后第二呢，就是我们这个电量一直在增加，所以我们接下来要进口的天然气的这个数量会越来越多，所以碳的这个排放量会增加，不用讲。然后第二是对国家的这个经济也会带来这个伤害。
In short, natural gas is not a long-term solution to new AI-driven energy needs, and renewables are still catching up. That's why a word once shelved is now returning to the national conversation: nuclear. Malaysia's Deputy Minister of Energy Transition and Water Transformation, Akmal Nasir, has openly said, without nuclear power, Malaysia is unlikely to meet its 2050 net zero target. Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation Chang Lee Kang also pointed out that nuclear power plays a role in shaping foreign investor confidence.
AI 相关行业是什么？基本上就是算力，还有这个储存所以我们需要很多这个data center。 所以我们如果要发展 AI 行业，我们要吸引更多的外资进来，我们就没有办法，我们就需要用到很大的这个电量，所以我们其实是为了接下来我们的这个能源的这个一个规划来的。
Nuclear energy is not a new idea in Malaysia. In 2008, the government established the Nuclear Power Development Steering Committee, JPPKN, and in 2011, the Malaysian Nuclear Power Corporation, MNPC. But after the Fukushima disaster in Japan, the government shelved plans to build nuclear power plants due to safety concerns and eventually dissolved MNPC in 2019. Now, with AI driving a surge in electricity demand, nuclear energy is back on the table, and with it, the old debate between supporters and critics. Supporters say nuclear power is low carbon, stable, and runs around the clock, making it an ideal backup for intermittent sources like solar. But critics point out the challenges. Nuclear plants are expensive to build and often take 10 to 15 years to connect to the grid. They also require strict regulatory oversight and pose a long-term challenge of managing radioactive waste. Even small modular reactors, SMRs, seen as a safer next-generation option, are still in early development and face cost overruns and technological hurdles. On the economic front, Forbes cites a study using the Levelized Cost of Energy, LCOE, a method that calculates the total cost of building, operating, and maintaining power plants over their lifetimes. The findings? Nuclear energy is on average at least 5 times more expensive than solar and wind.
And we are still having issue with our waste management for municipal waste. How sure we are not going to have issue with the nuclear waste? How sure we are if anything happen in the future that is going to be well taken care of? How are we sure that the communities who are staying nearby that area are not going to be impacted?
While many experts highlight that nuclear energy is zero carbon, stable, and controllable, others caution that using net zero as the sole benchmark for environmental sustainability is too narrow.
So, if I put a ton of nuclear waste right in the middle of Putrajaya, well, it's almost nothing in terms of net zero. There's no, carbon emissions and so forth. But there is radioactivity impact, there's toxicity impact, right? If we're just tying up with every other solutions to net zero, it will impact how we are going to roll it out in future.
Among residents living near data centers, opinions are divided. Some see nuclear as necessary to ensure long-term energy supply, while others fear that even a single accident could have lasting ecological and human consequences.
Pasal apa sekarang zaman moden dia nak semua kata nuklear ni memang kena pakai. Kalau tak ada tenaga tak cukup. Mana apa projek pun kita nak gunakan dia.
Jangan guna nuklear lah. Guna yang sekarang ni je lah. Kesan dia daripada segi alam sekitarnya kepada manusia juga, kepada kita kehidupan ni tak kira lah kesihatan Itu memang memberi kesan lah.
Malaysia's 13th National Plan, released this year, confirms that the government intends to introduce nuclear power as part of its clean energy mix, aiming to launch operations by 2031. The Energy Transition and Water Transformation Ministry has already begun preliminary feasibility studies and announced the formation of a cross-ministerial technical committee, following guidance from the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. At this stage, no decisions have been made regarding reactor technologies or projected generation capacity. Whether nuclear power becomes the solution is still up in the air, but there is a more urgent question. Do we have the right policies to govern an industry that's expanding this fast? How can we ensure these companies bring in investment, technology and jobs, rather than drain public resources, pollute the environment, and degrade the quality of life in nearby communities? Take Johor, Malaysia's fastest growing data center hub. It wasn't until April 2024 that the state government officially published a local development guideline for data centers. In June, it formed a special task force for data center development, which meets monthly to review new applications. Before this, data center projects were approved under general construction permit procedures. Johor Executive Councillor Lee Ting Han, who also co-chairs the task force, admitted that the earlier approval process was not as stringent as it is now.
Before that, it was one single committee that just looked at to make sure that the planning is okay. They have sufficient water, electricity, they have sufficient connectivity, fiber optics, and etc. But as we move along, we realize that it's getting more and more. As we also learn, right, after a while, we also learn a bit, data center is not just about putting water, putting electricity all together. You have to look at efficiency of it, power usage efficiency. You have to look at water usage efficiency so that they don't waste resources. And lately, we asked them to go one step further to look at alternative water.
Since February 2025, all new applications have been reviewed by two separate committees. The first checks for technical compliance, and the second evaluates sustainability criteria, such as responsible use of electricity and water, corporate social responsibility, use of renewable energy, and whether local hires are paid fairly. But that raises a key concern. Can these new standards be enforced on projects that were approved earlier when rules were less stringent?
No, because we cannot apply rules retrospectively. Right? But as the industry progresses, there will be a natural pressure on them to need to move towards that direction. For example, when we start to ask data centers to offer better salary, then those better ones will tap from the less efficient one. Then they don't have workers. Then the rising tide will lift all boats eventually.
Think tank Amber has noted that in some ASEAN countries, data center-focused sustainability frameworks were implemented after the boom began, potentially leaving already operational facilities out of sync with the latest sustainability standards. And once a data center goes online, it must run 24/7 with minimal disruption, making retroactive upgrades for energy efficiency nearly impossible. At the national level, there are two sets of guidelines for data centers. One from the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, MIDA, under the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, MITI, and another from Plan Malaysia, under the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. The sustainable approaches of both tend to focus on two main strategies: improving energy and resource efficiency, and encouraging the use of renewable energy. But according to IC's Associate Research Officer Sarah Liu, these approaches aren't comprehensive enough. She pointed out that metrics like power usage effectiveness, PUE, only reflect electricity used within the data center, but say nothing about where the electricity comes from, or the embodied carbon from construction and materials. To truly assess a data center's total emission, she argues, we need to look at the entire life cycle, from groundbreaking to end of life. Most guidelines also lack clear decarbonization targets or measurable requirements, such as mandating energy-efficient hardware. And crucially, most of these standards are voluntary under MIDA's Digital Ecosystem Acceleration Incentive Scheme, dissect program. Operators can apply for tax incentives if they meet certain thresholds, but Sarah Lu believes this carrot-only approach falls short and is unlikely to hold companies truly accountable.
The largest motivator tends to come from compliance. And so government regulation and having these ESG guidelines and sustainable guidelines in place would be really important so that firms would have to adhere to them. And from there, they would then have more stringent requirements on, say, adopting technologies that are more energy efficient, or doing more intense due diligence on the ESG front before embarking on the data center project.
Piara Pakaran, president of the Association of Water and Energy Research Malaysia, AWER, also warned that Malaysia must avoid becoming a dumping ground for outdated technologies. Instead of simply accepting what investors offer, we need to benchmark against global best practices and push for higher standards. In July, MITI Minister Tengku Zafrul announced that a new National Sustainable Data Center framework is expected to be launched by October. The framework, led by the Ministry of Digital through the Data Center Task Force, will coordinate policies across federal agencies and state governments, bridging the gap between planning and enforcement. At the time of recording, the framework had not yet been made public. But in a recent public speech, Deputy Minister Akmal Nasir said the new framework will set clear standards on energy efficiency, renewable sourcing, and resource management to ensure Malaysia's investment push doesn't come at the cost of long-term sustainability. So, will the new framework mandate data center operators to achieve certain levels of energy or water efficiency or renewable energy usage before being allowed to operate in Malaysia? We asked, and here's what he said.
Should we go to that extreme? I think that is where MITI has to look at. But for me, it's like we just need to have the framework so that it will give benefit or incentivize the good ones. It will also encourage the good behavior, because I think that is more relatable to kind of our environment here, which people understand that if you follow certain things, you will get more incentive, because that will create the good behavior among the industry players.
Beyond the debate over whether incentive-based mechanisms are effective, another question looms. In a country where nearly 80% of electricity still comes from coal and natural gas, with limited amounts of green power, how can some data centers claim to run on 100% renewable energy? One common approach is to purchase renewable energy certificates, RECs. Put simply, every time 1 megawatt-hour of renewable electricity is fed into the grid, a certificate can be issued. Companies can then buy these RECs to label the electricity they use as green power. There are two ways to buy RECs. The first is bundled, where the certificates and electricity come from the same source. The second is unbundled, where a company buys its power from one provider but purchases certificates from another. Critics argue that unbundled RECs can lead to greenwashing, because companies can claim to use renewable energy without actually reducing their real carbon emissions. Energy market consultant Evan Ng notes that while RECs are not the most credible mechanisms, they are commonly used in countries like Malaysia, where renewable supply and infrastructure are still limited.
The reason why this is adopted in Malaysia right now is also largely limited by the market design. Previously, before the CREST scheme, there were virtually no other ways to procure a very large amount of renewable power to decarbonize your energy consumption. And RECs is pretty much the only credible way to do so.
During our reporting, we reached out to Microsoft, which launched its Malaysia West Cloud region with 3 data centers in May this year. Microsoft has publicly pledged to run all of its data centers on 100% renewable energy by 2025. So we tried to find out how they plan to achieve that in Malaysia. Microsoft told us that it does not disclose data at the facility level. Instead, the company measures progress based on its global performance.
We are things where we will do offsets, okay, renewable energy offsets, okay, against the fossil fuels or the carbon type of energy that we actually uses. In addition, of course, in countries where we can, okay, we will be using renewable energy as well, okay, to ensure that our data centers are also powered with RE as well. So again, look at it in totality, the 400 DCs that we have got, right, the global networks that we have got. So Malaysia is part of that scheme that we have got, running the part of that entire network that we have got, and we actually made an equation holistically for all our data centers around the world.
Andrew Lau, Microsoft's Strategic Programs Director, added that the company's sustainability metrics go beyond carbon emission to include water use, waste management, land footprint, and more, forming a comprehensive science-based framework for assessing environmental performance. We then asked if carbon emissions are generated in Malaysia but offsets using renewable energy from another country, does that truly benefit either side?
That's how it's actually being done today, right? I don't think it's unfair to any particular country. There are certain countries where indeed they can operate completely net zero, okay, without use, because the energy supply itself are in fact net zero by itself, right? So maybe they are 100% hydro, for example. In the case of Malaysia, no. And therefore, one of the ways, okay, to actually do this is really to use offsets that we have through renewable that we can actually get hold of, okay, and contract to offset around the world.
At the time this video was recorded, we could not confirm the exact power sources used by Microsoft's data centers in Malaysia. Nonetheless, according to the company's 2025 sustainability report, Microsoft reduces its global purchase electricity-related emissions through clean energy procurement, green tariff programs, and the use of unbundled renewable energy certificates. Microsoft's Cloud ESG Planning Director for APAC told us that the company has signed power purchase agreements, PPAs, for a total of 34 gigawatts of renewable energy across 24 countries, allowing it to reach 100% renewable energy coverage across its entire portfolio as of 2025. However, he also acknowledged that standards for offsetting vary among data center operators, making oversight of benchmarking difficult, and Microsoft called for an international harmonized standard to govern such practices.
Right, and I think that's something that we literally preach to all regulators and government agencies in any engagement that we have, to really put across the fact that we need harmonization and alignment. If not, then I think different data center operators will be reporting things in a very different manner.
And there's another equity concern. As energy-hungry data centers snap up the available green electricity, how much will be left for everyone else?
So if you have, say, 40% renewable energy, the green benefit, taken out of that grid, given to this group of people, it also means that whoever the balance who are accessing the grid are actually accessing a lower environmentally friendly electricity, because you can't do double counting.
This could disproportionately affect export-oriented manufacturers and small businesses, especially those trying to qualify for low-carbon product certifications. If they can't access green energy, they'll lose out on global competitiveness.
And in future, if some of the manufacturers who are going to European market, and the market mandates, a certain level of carbon footprint, they have actually carbon leakage policies and all that. If they go full force on those, then our manufacturers will have difficulty accessing European market or other premium market that may subscribe to that.
Which brings us back to a deeper issue. Beyond the technical and policy questions, who decides how these resources are allocated? Who has a say in shaping the rules? And who was left out at the conversation? During our visit to several communities near the data centers in Pulai, Johor, we found that most residents didn't oppose the developments. In fact, many saw them as a boost to the national economy. However, when we asked whether they understood what a data center actually does, their answers were vague.
Sebab kita pun tak tahu pusat tu buat apa. Kita cuma tahu data center je lah.
Tapi sebenarnya kita perlukan penerangan. Apa itu data center yang sebenarnya dan apa penggunaan dia dari segi kuasa. kuasa apa elektrik, berapa banyak penggunaan air. Jadi nanti kita akan mengurangkan kebimbangan kita tentang sumber-sumber yang ni lah.
Beyond the information gap, there was also a contrast between the facilities for the data center and the village.
Macam mana air semangga tu boleh yang terbaik? Macam mana kita duduk kampung air tak baik? Kenapa kita kampung kita bayar? Data center pun bayar. Kenapa air tak sama?
希望有关当局可以注意一点这个水电方面啊，提升，当然越高越好啊，越多越好啊那。
Meanwhile, at a national level, the data center boom is framed as a strategic growth engine promising billions in FDI, the creation of high-skilled jobs, and support for Malaysia's AI ambitions. Johor Exco member Lee Ting Han pointed to official figures showing that Johor recorded the highest state GDP growth in 2024, partly driven by the construction industries tied to the data center surge. He described this as the first wave of spillover effects. The second wave is expected to push industries related to server manufacturing, semiconductors, and cooling technology, all part of the data center supply chain.
We are still at the very, very beginning of this whole journey. We have seen a similar journey in Ireland, in US. We hope that Johor will be able to follow that model and develop our own AI space. Manufacturing, like for example, WeWin, they do data server rack side. They employ 1,100 employees at the moment. Supermicros, they are going to employ thousands of employees when they start operation end of this year. We are creating industry that will offer jobs for the younger generations, a new industry that they may consider to work in Malaysia instead of abroad.
When visiting the communities, we also asked local residents whether they work at the nearby data centers.
Tak ada dengar lagi yang kerja kat sana.
Oh, tak dengar.
Kebanyakan orang kerja kuari ya, ada kuari, kawasan kuari situ kan.
Peluang pekerjaan semua nak sertifikat.
Oh, okey.
Dia nak sertifikat, bermakna dalam kampung ni memang ada, tapi bermakna sertifikat dia orang tak berapa kelulusan tinggi. Bermakna pekerja dalam ni kurang. Kurang pada data center. Adalah dalam 8 orang bekerja dalam data center sebagai security.
In response to public concerns, Johor Menteri Besar On Hafiz stated in August that the state has sufficient resources. To reduce pressure on national water supplies, Johor is introducing alternative water sources. Inda Water Consortium, IWK, and Johor Special Water, JSW, are now partnering to produce 12 million litres of recycled water daily, which is supplied to 2 data centres. At the federal level, Deputy Minister Akmal Nasir said the government is taking multiple steps. Apart from upgrading the grid and rolling out energy storage, they are also reforming electricity tariffs and pushing for cross-border renewable trade under the ASEAN power grid. He also noted that early demand projections for data centers may have overestimated actual usage, as many centers apply for maximum capacity, but in reality, energy usage is phased in gradually.
This is what is being worked internally between the utility provider as well as with our regulator, that we expect them to table the new demand projection in the next meeting of the second meeting for this year during the JPAD. Then we will get clearer picture the actual requirements, especially from the data center.
Still, Sarah Lu warns that data centers are fundamentally resource-intensive, making it crucial to have impact assessments that include local voices.
So I think a lot more of a cost-benefit analysis is required, and more communication about what the benefits are of these data centers to local communities and to Malaysia's economy versus some of the trade-offs. Even if they manage to contribute to the green economy, it's not what they are there for. They are there as the backbone of the digital economy, for sure. But there are still a lot of these downstream environmental and social effects that we've already witnessed from many other mature data center markets that needs to be actively mitigated and to be written into regulation and guidelines surrounding the data centers.
From the perspective of environmental groups, it's not just about whether communities were consulted, but also whether we should allow so many data centers to be built in the first place. Who decides what's enough, and who bears the cost behind those numbers?
We have to understand on what are the numbers of data centers that we could actually allow to be in the country. Then we have to make sure that each of them a proper climate risk assessment being done. The community has to be informed well. They need to understand on what are the risks that they are going to face.
In an era where AI and data are symbols of national competitiveness, the expansion of data centers seems inevitable. But who decides how far is too far when it comes to the energy, water, and policy required to power this race? Data centers may appear to be a tech issue, but there are matters of governance. How do we allocate resources? How do we include marginalized voices? How do we guard against hollow promises dressed in green? These questions shouldn't be buried under the shine of innovation, as they will determine the kind of society we become. We know this isn't a light topic or a clickbait headline, but we spent nearly half a year compiling research, conducting interviews, and visiting the ground to give you a clearer picture of how this industry is reshaping Malaysia. If you found value in our reporting, scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to support us. Your donation helps us continue producing journalism that matters. Thank you for watching.